Dave Chappelle leaks the tapes that prove what Ellen DeGeneres and Diddy did together. Hold up, put everything down and pay close attention, because what just hit the internet is sending shockwaves through every single corner of Hollywood. Did you really think the Diddy fallout was going to stop with the usual suspects? Or did you have a feeling the rabbit hole went way deeper into daytime television royalty? Just when everybody thought the headlines couldn't get any wilder, Dave Chappelle reportedly stepped into the ring and dropped footage that allegedly uncovers the exact, unscripted reality of what Ellen DeGeneres and Sean Diddy Combs were getting up to behind closed doors. We are talking about secret gatherings, exclusive access, and patterns of behavior that make those polite daytime interviews look like a masterclass in total misdirection. For years, the public was fed the squeaky clean image of harmless giveaways and friendly banter. But when you look at the unedited tapes and start connecting the dots, the vibe changes completely. Is this the moment the entire Hollywood illusion shatters once and for all? Are we finally seeing the true scope of who was really in those rooms when the cameras stopped rolling? Buckle up, because if these allegations and clips hold any weight, the game isn't just changing. It is about to blow wide open, and nobody in elite circles is safe from what is coming next. Now, if you have been watching the cultural landscape shift over the past few years, you already know that the ground beneath Hollywood has been shaking like never before. But what we are witnessing right now isn't just another routine celebrity controversy that gets swept under the rug after a 2-week news cycle. The spotlight that once rested solely on Diddy's private life has stretched into an absolute searchlight, illuminating corners of the entertainment industry that people were never supposed to look into. And when someone of Dave Chappelle's stature allegedly steps into the frame with raw, unedited footage and internal commentary, people don't just scroll past, they stop, rewind, and start re-evaluating everything they thought they knew about elite entertainment circles. Chappelle isn't coming at this like a sensationalist tabloid journalist or a sensationalist blogger hunting for quick clicks. He approaches the entire apparatus by pointing at documented behavior, subtle power dynamics, and tape archives that have been sitting in plain sight for decades without anyone daring to ask the real questions. And once those clips start getting lined up side by side, one name keeps surfacing with alarming regularity: Ellen DeGeneres. To really understand why this feels like an absolute paradigm shift, you have to remember who Ellen DeGeneres was to the American public for nearly 2 decades. She was the undisputed queen of daytime television, the face of family-friendly optimism, the woman who ended every single broadcast by telling millions of viewers to be kind to one another. She had the corporate sponsors, the highest-rated network time slots, the endless celebrity endorsements, and an image so polished you could practically see your reflection in it. But behind that carefully curated suburban charm sat an individual with unfettered, high-level access to the most exclusive networks in global entertainment. When you look back at the historical footage of Sean Diddy Combs appearing on her set, the dynamic wasn't just standard promotional banter between a host and a musical guest. There was an unmistakable, layered familiarity, an inside joke cadence that suggested their relationship didn't begin or end when the stage manager yelled quiet on set. They talked about exclusive parties, late-night after-hours gatherings, private flights, and invite-only guest lists with a level of casual comfort that now feels deeply unsettling given everything that has come to light regarding Diddy's private operations. What Chappelle's alleged commentary highlights so brilliantly is the stark, jarring contrast between public perception and private proximity. While daytime audiences were clapping along to light-hearted dance segments and million-dollar giveaways, those same studio doors were opening up to a world that operated on an entirely different set of rules. For years, rumors whispered through the industry about what really went on in those high-security VIP lounges, those private estates in the Hollywood Hills, and the top-floor hotel suites reserved for the ultra-wealthy. Yet, whenever these subjects came up on air, they were packaged as harmless Hollywood fun, wrapped in laughter, and presented as the glamorous lifestyle of the elite. Chappelle points out that this was the ultimate protective shield. Who would ever suspect that the friendly face of daytime TV had a front-row seat, or even an active hand, in environments where power, control, and absolute secrecy were the primary currencies? The sheer audacity of hiding behind a squeaky clean daytime persona, while maintaining deep ties to one of the most infamous party architects in music history, is precisely what makes this breakdown so captivating to millions of viewers worldwide. When you look closely at the archival clips being pulled into this conversation, the body language alone speaks volumes. You see moments where Diddy openly jokes about secret gatherings, about bringing young artists into exclusive environments, and about late-night events that go far past the early hours of the morning. Ellen doesn't flinch. She doesn't push back with investigative curiosity. She leans in, laughs along, and validates the entire lifestyle as if it's totally normal. In fact, in several broadcasted clips, she actively nudges the conversation toward those exclusive parties, inquiring about dates, times, secret locations, and who else from her A-list Rolodex would be in attendance. Chappelle allegedly highlights these exact exchanges to show how normalizing toxic, high-risk environments was built into the very fabric of mainstream entertainment. The daytime show wasn't just a place to promote movies and albums, it was a central hub where the powerful crossed paths, swapped access, and reinforced each other's status without ever having to answer to the public or law enforcement. This isn't just about two famous people knowing each other, because in Hollywood, everyone knows everyone. This is about structural overlap. It's about how the machinery of daytime television, major record labels, and elite social clubs worked in tandem to create an environment where boundaries were constantly blurred. Think about the sheer number of young rising talents who walked onto that daytime stage over the years: young musicians, teenage actors, overnight viral sensations fresh out of small towns with zero industry experience. They were invited into these polished studios under the impression that they were receiving their big break, a golden ticket to the top of the mountain. But behind the scenes, who was waiting in those green rooms? Who had direct access to these impressionable kids once the cameras stopped flashing? According to the narrative being exposed by Chappelle and supported by a growing mountain of archival footage, these daytime platforms acted as the ultimate funnel, introducing fresh talent directly into the orbits of veteran industry moguls who controlled the gates to fame, fortune, and silence. To make matters worse, this entire dynamic relied heavily on the silence of everyone involved. For decades, if an insider, a crew member, or a young artist attempted to speak out about the uncomfortable realities of these private gatherings, they were instantly painted as unstable, ungrateful, or looking for a payday. The public was so conditioned to love the daytime brand that any criticism was immediately dismissed as ridiculous gossip. Chappelle's analytical breakdown strips away that layer of public trust, forcing audiences to look at the exact same footage through a completely different lens. When you watch those classic interviews today, knowing what we know now about the ongoing federal investigations, the legal filings, and the horrific accounts from victims who have finally stepped forward, the charming jokes don't sound like jokes anymore. They sound like open confessions broadcast to millions of oblivious people who were simply too captivated by the star power to see the truth hiding in plain sight. As Chappelle reportedly pulls back the curtain on these vintage broadcast tapes, he zeroes in on the systematic way power was wielded to keep these ecosystems functioning without interruption. It was a symbiotic relationship built on mutual preservation. The music mogul needed the mainstream respectability and family-friendly insulation that only a beloved daytime host could provide, while the daytime icon gained access to the trendiest, most exclusive cultural spaces that kept her brand relevant to younger generations. They fed off each other's influence, creating an untouchable alliance that stood firm for nearly 2 decades. But as the legal walls begin to close in on Diddy and the public demands real accountability for everyone who enabled or participated in these networks, that untouchable alliance is crumbling before our very eyes, exposing the intricate web of influence, control, and silence that defined an entire era of Hollywood culture. And the deeper you dig into these archival footage drops, the clearer it becomes that the interactions between Ellen and Diddy were not isolated events or mere television gimmicks. They were part of a broader, well-established operational pattern that extended across multiple high-profile social circles. When Chappelle allegedly lays out these timeline comparisons, he shows how specific dates of these daytime broadcasts perfectly line up with notorious private gatherings hosted in Los Angeles, Miami, and New York. The conversations on air were practically coded invitations, subtle nods to an inner circle that understood exactly what was being discussed while the average viewer at home laughed along at the surface-level banter. This was security in plain sight, a psychological trick where hiding your true activities in front of 40 million viewers was actually safer than keeping them entirely in the dark, because no one would ever suspect that a broadcast airing at 4 in the afternoon was connected to things happening at 4 in the morning behind locked doors. The sheer scale of this revelation is what has sent shockwaves through the entire media industry. We are no longer discussing isolated rumors or anonymous internet posts. We are looking at documented broadcast history that has been re-examined, cross-referenced, and laid out for the world to see. Chappelle's unique position in the culture allows him to speak on these dynamics with an authority that few others possess. Having famously walked away from massive industry contracts himself when he felt the system becoming toxic and controlling. So when he speaks on how power operates behind the scenes, people pay attention, and when he connects those dots directly to the daytime entertainment apparatus, the entire foundation of Hollywood PR begins to crack under the weight of its own hypocrisy. What makes this initial phase of the scandal so damaging is the complete destruction of the clean daytime narrative. For years, executives, publicists, and media handlers worked tirelessly to ensure that the public saw Ellen as a harmless, fun-loving icon who brought joy into everyday households. But as these leaked analysis clips continue to circulate across digital platforms, that image is being permanently replaced by the image of an industry gatekeeper who moved comfortably alongside some of the most dangerous, predatory figures in the business. The public is realizing that the boundary between wholesome daytime television and the dark underbelly of late-night Hollywood was never a wall at all. It was a revolving door, and the people holding the keys to that door were the very ones we trusted to entertain us every single day. As we examine the fallout from these initial breakdowns, it becomes painfully obvious that the conversation cannot stop with just two individuals. The footage Chappelle allegedly highlights exposes an entire infrastructure built to protect, enable, and celebrate figures who operated with total disregard for ethics, boundaries, and the safety of the young people brought into their orbits. The public is finally waking up to the reality that the glamorous world of television was often used as a massive smoke screen, hiding a deep-seated culture of exploitation that operated with zero consequences for decades. And as this first wave of evidence settles into the public consciousness, the stage is set for an even deeper, more horrifying breakdown of the specific instances where young, vulnerable talents were pulled into this very machine, leaving scars that would last a lifetime while the perpetrators walked away completely unscathed. The narrative shifts from general patterns of access to specific, documented cases that highlight the human cost of this unchecked power. When you examine the timeline of events that Chappelle reportedly outlines, you see a disturbing trend of rising young stars who entered these high-level social circles full of energy, ambition, and promise, only to emerge years later broken, traumatized, and desperately trying to warn the public about what they experienced behind those closed doors. The connection between daytime access, elite party culture, and the destruction of young Hollywood talent is no longer a theoretical debate. It is a tragic reality that is finally being dragged into the harsh light of day for the entire world to judge. The narrative shifts from general patterns of access to specific documented cases that highlight the human cost of this unchecked power. When you examine the timeline of events that Chappelle reportedly outlines, you see a disturbing trend of rising young stars who entered these high-level social circles full of energy, ambition, and promise, only to emerge years later broken, traumatized, and desperately trying to warn the public about what they experienced behind those closed doors. The connection between daytime access, elite party culture, and the destruction of young Hollywood talent is no longer a theoretical debate. It is a tragic reality that is finally being dragged into the harsh light of day for the entire world to judge. When you look closely at how these Hollywood power dynamics function, you begin to realize that the green room was never just a place for guests to drink water and wait for their cue. In this newly dissected footage, Chappelle points directly to the off-camera interactions where young performers, teenage pop icons, and aspiring artists were introduced to the absolute titans of the music business. Imagine being a teenager who just scored a top 10 hit. You walk onto a set feeling like you have achieved the ultimate American dream. You are greeted with wild applause, custom merchandise, and a glowing host who promises to introduce you to the biggest movers and shakers in the galaxy. But what happens when the cameras stop recording, the audience files out of the studio, and you are led into private backrooms where the rules of normal society simply do not apply? According to the analysis laying out these leaked breakdowns, those daytime studios functioned as an informal screening ground. It was an environment where industry executives could gauge who was eager to please, who was naive enough to trust the system, and who could be easily integrated into private, unmonitored gatherings. The footage highlights several archival moments where young stars look visibly uncomfortable while veteran figures joke about taking them under their wing for 48-hour party binges, exclusive island trips, and late-night studio sessions that had very little to do with recording music. At the time, the public laughed it off as friendly mentorship. Today, in light of federal indictments, witness statements, and mounting civil suits, Those exact same moments look like open documentation of groomed vulnerability. Consider the sheer psychological toll placed on these young artists. They were thrust into high-stakes environments surrounded by adults who held total control over their recording contracts, their television appearances, and their public reputations. If a young performer felt uncomfortable with the advances, the atmosphere, or the heavy presence of adult substances, who were they supposed to tell? Were they going to complain to the very television hosts who held the keys to their mainstream promotion? Were they going to call the police on figures who bragged about having top law enforcement officials, high-powered defense attorneys, and corporate executives in their back pockets? The system was designed to ensure that speaking out meant instant professional suicide, complete character assassination, and financial ruin, as Chappelle reportedly connects these dots. He draws direct lines to the tragic trajectories of icons who spent their adult lives trying to process the trauma inflicted on them during their youth. Take a look at the resurfaced live streams, archival interviews, and haunting public outcries from stars who repeatedly warned us that people were targeting them, that their finances were being stolen, and that they were trapped in environments they could not escape. Back when those videos first went viral, mainstream media outlets labeled those artists as unhinged, unstable, or battling personal demons. But when you examine those desperate pleas alongside the newly highlighted footage, it becomes horrifyingly clear that they were not losing their minds. They were crying out for help in front of a world that refused to listen until it was far too late. The role of the host in these scenarios cannot be overstated. When a trusted media figure repeatedly normalizes predatory figures, invites them onto national television, and jokes about their secret lifestyle, it creates a massive illusion of safety. Parents across the country trusted these daytime broadcasts. They allowed their talented children to travel to Los Angeles, sign with big-name managers, and attend exclusive industry mixers because they believed the people running the show were watching out for them. In reality, that golden ticket was often a passage into a dark network where boundaries vanished the moment the security doors locked shut behind them. Furthermore, the leaked analysis zeroes in on the financial and contractual traps that kept everyone quiet. In Hollywood, silence is not just requested. It is legally enforced through aggressive non-disclosure agreements, ironclad management contracts, and the constant threat of endless legal battles. Young artists were routinely given massive monetary advances that kept them heavily in debt to the labels, meaning they could never walk away without facing total bankruptcy. Meanwhile, the figures at the top traded favors, access, and promotional favors like currency, creating an impenetrable wall of protection that kept the truth buried for decades. Chappelle's analytical commentary highlights how this deep dive into the human cost of unchecked power sets the stage for the next critical phase of the scandal: the legal, financial, and cultural fallout that is currently sending shockwaves through corporate boardrooms and television networks worldwide. As federal investigations expand and anonymous insiders begin coming forward to protect themselves, the individuals who once ruled the airwaves are finding themselves backed into a corner with nowhere left to hide, facing a public that is finally ready to demand real justice. The legal, financial, and cultural fallout of this unfolding disaster is no longer just a distant threat looming on the horizon. It is actively tearing through the highest corridors of corporate media and entertainment power. Right now, when you look at the sheer velocity with which these leaked breakdowns and analytical reports are spreading across global platforms, it becomes glaringly obvious that the old crisis management playbook is completely useless. In decades past, a massive scandal involving A-list figures could be quietly contained with a few well-timed public statements, a high-stakes settlement behind closed doors, or a carefully orchestrated media distraction designed to shift the public focus elsewhere. But in an era where digital archives are permanent, where independent creators dissect broadcast footage frame by frame, and where former insiders are actively looking for leverage to protect themselves from upcoming federal indictments, the iron grip that these media giants once held over the narrative has completely disintegrated. What Dave Chappelle's reported analysis brings to light is the terrifying reality that major corporate sponsors, network executives, and talent agencies are facing a reckoning of unprecedented proportions. Think about the billions of dollars that were funneled into these daytime talk show empires, record label distribution deals, and exclusive celebrity branding partnerships over the last 20 years. Boardrooms at major television syndicates were built entirely on the profitability of these wholesome, accessible public personas. Now, with forensic digital analysis connecting those exact studio settings to high-risk private networks and unchecked behavioral patterns, those same corporations are scrambling to scrub their digital archives, quietly sever long-standing business ties, and brace themselves for an incoming wave of subpoenas from federal prosecutors who are leaving no stone unturned. Industry insiders are describing the atmosphere behind closed doors at major networks as absolute panic. Leaked reports from high-level corporate meetings suggest that crisis management firms are frantically auditing every single interview clip, backstage green room recording, and promotional appearance involving these key figures that aired over the last 2 decades. They aren't just looking at what was broadcast to 40 million viewers on television. They are investigating the unedited raw footage, the off-camera interactions between segments, and the confidential emails between talent managers and production leads. The fear isn't just about public relations or subscriber loss anymore. It is about direct legal exposure. If investigators can prove that network executives or executive producers were aware that their sets were being used as a pipeline or a screening ground for dangerous private gatherings, the legal liability extends far beyond individual celebrities. We are talking about potential corporate racketeering charges, civil conspiracy lawsuits involving hundreds of millions of dollars, and the complete collapse of legacy media institutions. Furthermore, the financial domino effect is already starting to play out in real time. Major advertisers who once competed for prime commercial slots during these daytime broadcasts are quietly pulling their funding, demanding moral clause exemptions, and redirecting their marketing budgets away from any personality connected to these overlapping circles. High-profile talent agencies that represented these megastars for decades are facing unprecedented internal revolts, with younger agents and mid-level artists threatening to walk away unless the agency completely cuts ties with legacy figures implicated in the ongoing investigations. The monetary loss is astronomical, but the loss of institutional credibility is something no amount of money can repair. The broader cultural shift happening among the viewing public is perhaps the most devastating aspect of this entire fallout. For generations, the average person consumed television entertainment with a baseline level of trust. When a beloved host invited a rising star onto their set, or when a famous music producer received a Lifetime Achievement Award, the public assumed that these achievements were the result of talent, hard work, and good intentions. Today, that trust has been completely shattered. Audiences are no longer viewing these celebrity interactions through the lens of admiration. They are looking at them with intense suspicion, dissecting every awkward look, every out-of-place joke, and every nervous laughter as a potential clue pointing toward something far more sinister happening behind the scenes. This dramatic shift in public perception has created a situation where the figures at the center of this controversy can no longer navigate public spaces or media appearances without facing immense scrutiny. The protective shield of celebrity status has turned into a target. Anonymous sources within Hollywood PR circles report that several high-profile individuals are effectively in hiding, refusing to leave their heavily guarded private estates, turning off comment sections across their social media channels, and communicating exclusively through teams of high-powered defense attorneys. The luxury, access, and social clout that once defined their lives have been replaced by the constant, suffocating fear of the next document drop, the next leaked audio tape, or the next unsealed federal court filing. As federal agencies continue their deep dive into the broader networks surrounding these figures, the focus is rapidly expanding beyond the original key players. Investigators are reportedly examining flight logs, private estate security records, luxury transport manifests, and financial transactions that link these daytime media hubs directly to private retreats and exclusive parties held around the globe.